Hello, welcome to Matters of DeCorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. Last time I said I'd talk about why it had been so long since I made a video, and that was 8 months or so ago. So, that bears a little addressing at the front here. Let's put it down to I've taken on a lot more projects. I don't have the kind of time or mental energy that I have had in the past. And I let myself fall into the toolbox fallacy, a little logical conundrum where I kept believing I did not have the tools necessary to do what I wanted to do the way I wanted to do it, and that was sufficient to stop me from doing the project. This is a new camera. I will have probably an episode talking about the camera and the gear I'm using at the moment, but you might notice this is different. Hopefully you'll think it's better. I will let you know my opinion after I see how this one fares online. All that being said, I've had some requests over the time for stuff that I'd like to cover, and I think tempers have cooled sufficiently that I can talk a bit about the last Star Wars movie, as Star Wars 9, The Rise of Skywalker. And my reactions to it, and what I think about it, and that being the end of the saga, kind of my reaction to the whole sequel trilogy process as a whole. So, The Last Skywalker. Before I launch into this, there is a distinction I really need to make. I like a lot of movies that people do not necessarily consider good. So when I say I liked a movie, I'm not saying that movie was good necessarily. I'm not saying it was bad. Whether a movie is good or bad is not a measurement of whether I'm going to like it. It's, were there elements of fun? Were there things in the movie that I'd think I'd see done or do myself in a role-playing game? That's usually my lens. So that being said, I liked The Last Skywalker. I do not think it's a good movie, but I liked it. Because it had some pretty good moments. Overall, how do I describe this? Remembering that most of my point of view is through the lens of role-playing games, or my experience with role-playing games. Looking at The Last Skywalker means looking back at the rest of the sequel trilogy and seeing what kind of adjustments were being made and why. I don't think that it was ever written as a trilogy. I think it was written one movie at a time. And I think a lot of the writing is a direct response to criticisms of the last film. History has been exceedingly kind to The Last Jedi, the 8th movie. It was not at the time. At the time it came out, there was a lot of negative reaction and hostile and vitriolic. Since then, since that movie came out and since we've been reacting to it, a fairer, less angry look at that film reveals it to be, it wasn't that bad. It had some good elements to it. It had... It was a lot more consistent than people originally thought it was. It worked okay. It was decent for a Star Wars project. Maybe not a great Star Wars film, but it was okay. The stuff in there fit, and the themes were good, and it seemed that there was a lot of consistency to it that we missed in our rush to criticize. Unfortunately, The Rise of Skywalker seems to have been written almost entirely off of the early criticism of The Last Jedi. There are lines and sections and whole plot threads devoted to fixing problems in the last Jedi, which in retrospect turned out maybe not to have been problems. Of course, if they wrote it in response to the criticism and added things to it specifically because of the criticisms, well, they had to spend several years making the movie. They didn't have time to go back and readdress how views had changed just before the movie came out. So Last Skywalker, because I don't think it was written as part of a trilogy, but these movies were written in response to how the last movie came out, with whatever plot they could think to throw in between the criticisms. That's a terrible way to write a trilogy it's a terrible way to write any movie. It's a terrible way to write a trilogy. It really, really is. No, I liked elements of how they handled that, though. Not because it's a good way to write a movie, but because I've been that game master. I've been in games where this had to happen. I have run games where this had to happen. Let me tell you what that situation is. You have a campaign that everyone really enjoys. People are in it for their characters, and they've had really good times, and they've had, jump up and down moments and stuff that, well, I show up every week for this game just because I really love my character and how it's gone. And then someone else says, hey, I've got an idea. I want to run an adventure. And Jerry's like, okay, sure, great, run with it. And it's not good. It doesn't treat the characters the same way. The world is different. The villains are off. And you don't have a good time. You're showing up because, well, this is tradition and this is the character that I like to play. And if I don't play the game, the character doesn't get to move on and progress, even if it's in kind of a ugly, messy situation. And then you get to the end of that campaign arc eventually. Thank God they do end. And you're sitting back going, oh God, this has been wrecked for me. This is ruined. I can't ever get back. There were unanswered questions and plot threads that weren't handled well because the guy who was running it really didn't understand, or at least I didn't think so. And the original game master or one of the other guys who really gets it's like, I'll fix this. Give me one story arc. I will fix this up. And in the first 5 minutes of the new game session, in the first 5 minutes of how it's going to run from here on out, you throw corrections and things. Okay, so this is what has really been happening. You thought that happened, but this is what was happening, and it's way deeper. And this ties back to the stuff you love from the first part of the campaign. I've done that. And I saw that in the first 5 minutes of the Rise of Skywalker. That's exactly what I saw. It was unmistakable. That guy that you were upset didn't have any background, and he was supposed to be this big villain, and they killed him without anything about who or what he was, and that was a puppet. It was the original bad guy all along. I made that bad guy to convince you to follow me here so that I can be the bad guy that always meant to be. Oh, and I've got all of this stuff now, like what I had before, but bigger and better. I've practically said those words in game. You'd have to be a role player of some note, of some time and experience to recognize that sign. This is not an uncommon occurrence for groups that have run for a very long time. That scrambling to recapture what the campaign is about for one last hurrah to take the taste of that last campaign out of your mouth. And if Last Jedi had been as bad as everyone reacted to it as, it would have been maybe a little bit more palatable. But it is what it is. And I enjoyed seeing that particular role-playing trope thrown up on the screen in as clumsy and ham-handed a fashion as I have ever had to do when I was trying to save a campaign. There are going to be spoilers for The Last Jedi, or for the whole sequel trilogy, including The Rise of Skywalker. You have the last thing in the series, but the one before it had the last in the title. It's The Rise of Skywalker. It's plenty of spoilers. If I haven't already spoiled stuff, I'm going to spoil stuff. It was 6 months ago. Just sorry, spoilers. I loved the tank full of Snoke clones in Palpatine's little laboratory. That was just kind of a beautiful touch that I would have thrown in a game. It's like, oh yes, I have a pile of him over there. I might need some more, but I'm not sure I'm going to go with that product line anymore. I might start something fresh if I ever do this in the future. Not that I don't have a plan that will make them completely obsolete. Palpatine coming back. That is a clean element out of the extended universe. That has happened so many times in comic books and novels. Palpatine's a great villain. Okay, Palpatine's back. Fine. I like the character bits. I like how the characters interact. Finn and Poe and Rey and BB-8. I like how the characters interact because that's the interaction I see in role-playing games. That is how I see PCs interacting. That's one of the things that attracted me to Star Wars. Not that I knew it at the time, because I got into Star Wars well before I got into role-playing. But ever since then, the Star Wars games I have played have had a particular flavor, have had a particular, this is how Star Wars characters act. My Star Wars characters act. I see Poe Dameron up on screen, it might as well be Shade Hurricane. Because you see that bravado and that throwing caution to the wind, and that I've got great stats, I can try and make this roll. And that's, and yeah, I've seen all that stuff at the table. I've seen that over character sheets and dice. And where I've seen that in character sheets and dice, and I see it up on the screen, okay, I can accept that being there, because I'm seeing, yeah, if someone's doing it the way I would do it, I've got that inherent, I see them doing it correctly. I see those characters in a story they shouldn't have been in. They deserved a different story, an entirely different story. But that's what it was. There they are. The story for The Rise of Skywalker was terrible. Not the character bits. Rey is the descendant of Palpatine. Okay. Tie her into the main villain. That's fine. Another RPG trope that really works. I mean, ever since No, I Am Your Father, there has to be something. Or Luke, I Am Your Father. Ever since you did that tie-in between Luke and Vader in Empire Strikes Back, if you've got that familial connection, okay. That's fine. It is not an original trope. It was also cramming all of this stuff into the last movie. It made it clumsy. It might have been a better statement all around if Rey had just been a son of Junker, or a daughter of Junkers. No one of any import, but she has this ability within her. It's accessible. It's something anyone could have. It's tying back to the slave boy at the end of Last Jedi, using the Force to pull the broom over. Suddenly, okay, all right, the Force is dividing itself out amongst those who need it the most. You are my granddaughter. Okay, that is also fine. It is not a well-handled statement, but okay. Kylo Ren's redemption. Kylo didn't need a redemption. Sometimes a villain gets to stay a villain. Once he took out his father to complete his journey to the dark side, yeah, I was good with him staying there. He got a redemption arc. Because I guess you have to have a redemption arc in the third movie. And, okay. You didn't have to do it. You could have left it and it would have been fine, and there would have been that extra little bit of tragedy. Okay. But, yeah, you had the feel-good redemption arc. Alright. I've, again, done that in games. Like, you know what? Now, I think I'm going to... I've been the person in a Star Wars game that everyone turned to, can you redeem me if I fall to the dark side? So the redemption's a part of the trope. It's a part of Star Wars. Okay. There's always forgiveness. And handling it as tastefully as they did with the passing of Carrie Fisher, I miss you, Carrie, was pretty good. They handled that about as well as they could have, and kudos. That's difficult to deal with. Relationship between Rey and Kylo, okay. Dyad in the Force, new Force rule. Nice. I would have liked to have seen something harken back to something that had been done and that might have been done someplace in the EU. There might have been other Force-crossed, star-crossed lovers, or just a familial connection that close. Sure. It was fine. They worked throughout the movies to establish that matter could pass between the two of them if they were focused enough. Okay. Passing the lightsaber, kind of cool. Nice moment. Knights of Ren. Completely wasted. One line by a stormtrooper, easy to misinterpret, telling us who they were, even though those of us who had watched knew who they were. And, yeah. And a bunch of hovering around the edge of frames and one fight scene. I didn't care who the Knights of Ren were by the end of that movie. It didn't matter. They could, if you can easily exclude them and have another badass fight scene towards the end, they didn't need to be the Knights of Ren. Could have been anyone. Could have been more Imperial Guard. Didn't matter. The kiss. Gratuitous. Absolutely gratuitous. There was no reason to put it in, but, they did. They're Hollywood shorthand for, oh, this is a relationship that could be much deeper. He's dead. Fine. Again, not great, but fine. The whole plot, the whole storyline. I've seen this done before. And it sucked in the game, and it sucked in the movie. I have 10,000 Star Destroyers. I've seen that. I talked about the worst Star Wars game I had ever been in, and it was some douche who was an Imperial Admiral who had 10,000 Star Destroyers and was going to use them to conquer the... Okay. So, I do enjoy seeing things that I've done in-game up on that screen, but the worst friggin' game I've ever been in, and boom, up there. Oh, and they can all destroy a planet. Big friggin' deal. And okay, decentralizing the threat. That's a good thing to do. If you can decentralize the threat, you make it a much bigger threat. And if you put a big red candy-like shoot this to turn off the bad guy button in your game at that point, you have destroyed the entire benefit of decentralizing the threat. Even if you can move the button around. It's still one roll to hit. So I do have problems with elements of the movie. And it's okay. It's not a good movie. It's not a good Star Wars movie. Flat out. It's just not a good Star Wars movie. It is not a good movie It was well shot. The cinematography is good. The special effects are on point. They didn't overuse CG. There were plenty of callbacks. Wedge Antilles showing up for 0.4 of a second was lovely. But so technically, it's fine. It was fine. Where they reached for dramatic beats, they got the dramatic beats. Where the music needed to support the action, the music supported the action. As a project, as an exercise in making a film, technically, the Rise of Skywalker was fine. Where it failed, where so many movies fail, as the tools for movie making become more common and easier to use, is the one thing that you can't just program into a computer and make it go: the writing, the story. Where it failed was the story. And the first failure of the story was not writing the trilogy as a trilogy. Writing the trilogy one movie at a time, and bending to the immediate criticism of the previous film, which is going to probably mellow over time, and using that criticism as your guideline for writing movie. If a criticism of the last movie gets thrown into your new movie as a line or scene, you have already failed in your writing. You need to be writing the story for the story's sake and not for the critic's sake. But then, when you have a universe full of tropes, when you're dealing with a property that has created a universe of tropes, and you go to the bad ones and you use them poorly, when you go to apply things that have been working formulas in previous movies, but you go to just the most obvious, ham-handed, ridiculous lengths to make them seem like they fit. It's not good writing. It was a terribly written movie. It was a terribly written movie from beginning to end, with moments of brilliance in the form of properly conveyed RPG tropes. And that saved the experience for me, as far as I'm concerned. I enjoyed watching the movie. I enjoy bad movies. When I get sick, I turn to Leonard Part 6. If you don't know what that is, look it up. I might talk more about it someday. I like me some bad movies. And Rise of Skywalker might end up being one of those so bad it's goods over time, for Star Wars fans specifically. Also for fans of good writing who want to watch the bad writing happen. I study art by studying the bad art and learning what not to do. I'm going to run another Star Wars game one of these days. I'm going to take much more of an approach. I've been watching The Mandalorian, and I really, really enjoyed The Mandalorian. Because they treated it exactly the way you need to treat a Star Wars property in this post-Rise of Skywalker world. You either walk away entirely from that core Star Wars storyline and make your own world within that world, which The Mandalorian does beautifully, or I've also been watching the most recent season of Clone Wars, which has come out on Disney Plus, and yeah, or you dig so deep into a tiny little portion of the Star Wars mythos and lore that it is also separated from that main the Empire builds a Death Star and we blow it up storyline, that you can explore that free from the constraints of that giant, hovering, amazing trope in the 70s, and kind of tired one now. Well, those are my feelings on the sequels and the Rise of Skywalker. I've said that like every single time, because again, they called the last movie The Rise of Skywalker and the not last movie The Last Jedi. So, language. And my feelings on The Rise of Skywalker, I would be interested in hearing what your thoughts are, to tell you the truth. If you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't enjoy the video, give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If your feelings, what you thought about The Rise of Skywalker or the sequels in general, or your thoughts on Star Wars, or role-playing in Star Wars, anything you'd like to hear me talk about, go ahead and leave me a comment below. You will love leaving me a comment. I will love getting one. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, why not? My channel is awesome. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you do, hit the little notification bell so that you actually get notified when my videos become available. Thank you for following me along on this particular ramble. Welcome back. I'm going to try and do these a little more often. We'll see how I do. In the meantime, thank you for watching. I'm Scott Corum. This is What Has Mattered to Me, and I'll see you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum.